Hello, today is November 9th, 2020. My name is Ashley Sanchez. I'm interviewing Ismenia Castelan for the Latino Oral History Project slash Voces of a Pandemic project at the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies at Northern Illinois University. This project is in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Ismenia, that the interview will be placed in the Northern Illinois University libraries and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything that you do not wish to answer or talk about, I'll honor your wishes. Also, if there is something that you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are several questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. So the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation at the Northern Illinois University libraries. Northern Illinois University libraries will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies at Northern Illinois University. So for the first question, do you give the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Northern Illinois University libraries?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Do you grant the university libraries right, title, and interest and copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Yes, I agree.
Do you agree to allow Northern Illinois University libraries to post the interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I agree.
Do you grant the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies consent to share your interview and your materials with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so we have many questions in the pre-interview form that we have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. Before Voces sends it to the Benson Library and NIU libraries, we would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or a family member. So that will not be a part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Benson libraries and NIU libraries. Do you wish to, do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview and your public file available to researchers at the Benson and NIU libraries?
Yeah, I agree.
And this is my last question. On occasion, the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies and Voces receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your numbers or email with journalists?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so now I will jump into the interview. So the purpose of this project is to encompass and just document the ways Latinos describe their experiences during COVID-19. So to start off, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, like your name, how you identify, your job overview, any educational background?
Okay, so my name is Ismenia Castelan. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I identify as Latina, where my parents, they come from Mexico. My mom was born in Mexico and my dad was born in Texas, but he was raised in Mexico for most of his life. So I identify with both the Mexican and the American culture. I am currently a 7th through ninth grade ESL teacher at Columbus Community School District in Columbus Junction, Iowa. Um, yes.
Okay. All right. So thank you for sharing. How did you first learn about COVID-19?
So I first heard about it like on Facebook, like people started posting about stuff about like coronavirus and like, about this virus that was in China and like all the way across the ocean, like on the other side of the world. And so like I wasn't really like I didn't really think much of it. I thought it was just like another like, meme that was going around. And then right like around like maybe February or like March, that's when I started hearing about that some cases were popping up in the US. And like I still didn't think it was kind of like a big deal until like I was listening on the radio because I have to commute to work, and so I would listen to the radio in the mornings, and they started talking about how like some cases started popping up in Iowa, and
Mm-hmm.
then so yeah, that's when I was like, oh, it's actually like coming here, like and here in Iowa of all places.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, it was in March when like the teachers around me, like my coworkers, they started getting a little bit worried, like what do you think of this coronavirus? Like, do you think it's something serious? Like, I didn't think it was at the time. But then I started hearing about like, like some schools were thinking about like closing down and all that, or like taking some time off. And so that was the week that we had our parent teacher conferences for the spring semester.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were just like kind of talking about like, maybe like we'll get closed down, but who knows? And then so we had our spring break that week also after conferences. And so we only had like maybe like 3 days off. And then basically on the last day of spring break is when we got an email saying that like all schools in the state of Iowa are being closed down until
Mm-hmm.
further notice. And then I feel like that's when it started getting a little bit more real for me. And I was like, like this is actually getting serious enough that they're closing down all the schools. And we didn't know for how long either. They thought it would be like maybe until like, I don't know, April. And then, yeah, they officially just closed down schools for the rest of the year. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just kind of like how I found out about it.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that initially you were like, oh, like most of us are like, oh, maybe it's like in another continent. It's not going to come here. How else would you describe your initial reaction about hearing the COVID-19 information?
I guess I was just kind of surprised, I guess, because like, at first like I didn't even know what it was or what it consisted of or like, what the symptoms are or anything like that. And so I was just kind of surprised like once I heard that it was like here in Iowa. And then I was even more surprised when they actually like shut down the schools for this. So that's when it kind of like feel like it got serious for me. I was like, like this is actually like a serious virus. Like there's a reason why they're shutting down the schools. And
Hmm.
so yeah.
Yeah. And so other than the school shutting down, was there any other point when you realized that it was serious, or was it mainly just having to do with your job in the schools?
I think another thing that happened that made me see that it was like really serious. So my boyfriend, his father passed away from this virus, and
Mm-hmm.
so he contracted the virus maybe like I don't know, maybe like 3 weeks after they shut down the schools in April, and so that's when he got it, and he had to be hospitalized, and like it was just like a whole experience of like because it was during the time that they didn't even let us like go into the hospital at all. Like everybody was like, wearing masks. Everybody was like going to the stores and buying all the toilet paper and bread and all that. And so it
Mm-hmm.
started getting serious in that time. And then finally, like his father passed away, and I feel like that's what kind of like hit home for me too. Like, this is actually like a serious virus. Like it's gotten close enough to like somebody that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like at the beginning, I was like, this is just a virus that's just in a different continent, and so I feel like that's what kind of like made it more serious for me too.
Yeah, yeah, that's understandable. Um, so I guess you've talked a little bit of how COVID has impacted you, but can you tell me how COVID-19 has, well, I guess like elaborate on how else it's impacted you?
So I guess like as a teacher, it's impacted me. So right now in our school, we have a mask mandate, but we are all 100% face to face. So we have
Mm-hmm.
all of our students just like normal. The only difference is that we sanitize like all the furniture. We make sure like we wash our hands and like use hand sanitizer. We wear our mask all the time. We have to like enforce that all the time. And so that's one thing that's affected it. Um, I guess another thing that affected it was I wasn't able to see my family for like a few months. So it was like during the time that my mom, she went to Mexico, so I hadn't seen her. So I was kind of like worried about her too because, the virus is over there in Mexico also. And then
Mm-hmm.
my dad was here and he's diabetic and like he has like, he's also a smoker. So I know that he probably could have been more prone to getting the virus also and like, having serious symptoms. So I didn't really see him for like maybe like 3 months. I didn't really like see any of my family members for like 3 months. and so that kind of affected me as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, and just like like the store shutting down and like having like shorter hours, and I don't know. I just also like when the schools got shut down too. Like I didn't really know what to do with myself at the time. Because I
Mm-hmm.
was like, there was a time like we weren't teaching at first because we didn't really know what to do. We weren't prepared for it at all. And so yeah, and then finally like they told us we had to do like Zoom meetings and like prepare all these online lessons. So it was a little hectic towards the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds hectic. And during this time, did you ever experience any symptoms or think like maybe like, oh, you contracted it?
Um, I'm not sure. I mean, I feel like I might have been, like exposed to it at some point. I feel like at this point it's not like it would. I wouldn't be surprised if I would have been exposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never felt like serious symptoms, and I haven't never like gotten myself tested at all. But I mean, I'm sure I've been exposed to it. And, I mean, thankfully, I haven't had any like serious symptoms of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's good to hear. So you mentioned that you talked a little bit about your mom and your dad and how she went to Mexico and how your dad um has like pre-existing conditions that like make him more vulnerable. In what ways has COVID impacted your family?
So I mentioned like didn't see them for like a long time, just because like I didn't want to risk, especially like after my boyfriend's dad had passed away from it. Like I feel like I was even more scared of it, like of it hitting home like to my parents. Um, I would also like yell at my dad sometimes, like if he would tell me like he would go hang out at one of his friends' house and like no, like you shouldn't be hanging out with people right now, and
Mm-hmm.
like because I feel like he didn't really take it that serious at first either. I don't know. That's just like how like Latino parents are. Like they
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, yeah, that's usually how it goes, right? Do your parents take it seriously now? Or are they still on the same boat?
they do, but they don't. So like they
Mm-hmm.
still will hang out and like be with their friends sometimes, but only like specific friends. Like they won't go into like large gatherings or not any of that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they do like wash their hands and like sanitize their hands and wear their masks all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they're more relaxed with it now, and they should.
Yeah. Yeah. And has your family ever had a scare? Like your mom and dad ever been worried about getting sick?
Thankfully, no. Like from the virus, no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. What about your brother? In what ways has your brother been impacted?
Mm, I mean, kind of the same thing. He lives with my parents, so I mean, like if they were to get exposed, I guess like he would get exposed too. I mean, he just works a night shift job, and then I mean, he wears his mask. He just goes about his day like normal. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think he like takes it like somewhat serious too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to see people's perspectives on it. Yeah. Um, can you tell me a little bit about how COVID has impacted, well, I mean, if you would like, how COVID has impacted your boyfriend and, yeah, your boyfriend?
Well, like I mentioned, his father passed away from it, so it was kind of like a traumatizing experience, especially like for him. So they weren't allowed to see him in the hospital at all. So the way that they had to say goodbye to him was through like FaceTiming.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, like his father couldn't really talk because he had the intubation
Mm-hmm.
tube in his mouth. And so yeah, it was like a traumatizing event. Like we were all there, and like I was trying to be there for him, and uh, I feel like he never really got to like say like a proper goodbye to him, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like just like kind of like took him away all of a sudden.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Um, so I guess another question I have is how how do you feel like COVID has impacted um the extent of, well, I guess, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. Um, so you mentioned that you and your boyfriend live together and you haven't been able to see your parents. Has it impacted the extent of how you're able to see your boyfriend's family?
Um, Not necessarily. I feel like ever since like his father passed away, like we've been like more, going to see like his mom, especially and like his sisters. because I feel like we kind of need like that family unity right now.
Mhm.
Because like we were he was also kind of in the same boat before his father, like the whole thing happened with his father. Like we didn't see his family either for like a few months either, because we were
Mhm.
just trying to take precautions. And then even then, like he still got exposed to it, and ended up being really affected by it.
Mhm.
But I mean, like now, like we do like go to see his family, and like we have family gatherings, but just like with his immediate family.
Mhm. Yeah. And has COVID impacted any of your family like outside of the US?
Mm. Some of my cousins and like my aunts have been exposed to it, I think. Like they've had symptoms of it. I mean, thankfully they haven't, you know, gone to like that point where it's like really bad that they have to go to the hospital or anything.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's good to hear as well. Um, let me see. So, we talked a little bit about how COVID has impacted you and your family members and those around you, but how do you feel that COVID has impacted the Latino community in Iowa?
So I feel like it definitely has impacted them. So like especially well like I look at like my boyfriend's dad, like he worked at the meat packing factory at Tyson. And
Mhm.
so they're like they really didn't care about their workers there, like their employees there. The majority of their employees there come from Latino backgrounds. And I was just like, you're gonna keep working even though there's a pandemic going on. And at first, like they didn't even like have like the proper how do you say it, like
P
protection gear. Yeah,
Mhm.
PPE. They didn't have like the proper protection PPE for them,
Mhm.
and they just didn't really like care about them at first until the outbreak came out, and then that's when they decided to bring in the PPE after it was too late.
Mhm.
But then even just like access to like healthcare too, that can affect too like the Latinos in Iowa also,
Mhm.
because they don't have as much access to healthcare, and especially like Latino families, like at the beginning, like maybe they didn't know what this virus was or how to deal with it or how serious to take it to, just like how my parents are. Um, and so I feel like, especially like my parents, like they won't take it completely serious until like it hits home for them. And so like I don't know how to make them understand that either.
Mhm. Yeah. So you mentioned like healthcare and work, but what about what about the school system? How do you feel like COVID-19 has impacted like the school system and Latinos?
Yeah, so the school district that I work at, the majority of the student population is Latinos.
Mhm.
And so when our schools got shut down, like, we don't have any like technology. Like our school isn't really like that well funded. So we didn't really have like the technology, to continue doing online classes. We have students who don't even have Wi-Fi at their house or don't have access to like a technology device or anything. And
Mhm.
so, some of the students, like I never even got to see them at all. And so I didn't know how they were doing or if like they were impacted by the pandemic or, you know, how they were doing in general, if they were getting food, anything like that, or proper care. And so I didn't know about them at all. Um, but yeah, like our school district, we are planning on bringing in a one-to-one initiative, so having laptops for all students. But even until now, like they haven't really, gone on that. Like we still have like many students who don't have their laptops yet or have like the technology yet or even like the internet in case we do go hybrid or completely online. So
Mhm.
I just feel like our students will be at a really disadvantage if we even do go completely online because
Yeah.
there's just not the support system there or the resources. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. So I know that you commute from your job to where you live. In your opinion, how has COVID-19 impacted the Iowa City area?
um, I feel like in Iowa City, they take it a lot more serious compared to like, like small town Columbus Junction, Iowa.
Mhm.
What I've noticed, like, like a lot of people wear their masks here in Iowa City. the small businesses, or like even all the businesses, like they take it seriously too. Um, but yeah, I mean, I feel like in our city, like they see it as more of like, there is a pandemic going on, like we need to be careful about this. I mean, yeah, there's still some people who like refuse to wear their masks or like will try to go against it, but like for the majority, like the most part, they're all mostly following and trying to, get rid of this pandemic.
Hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like Iowa City, I feel like initially it was kind of like everyone was like in the boat, like, it's all right. But
Mhm.
now they're like trying to be more serious about it. Um, so can you tell me how it was going out into the world? Wait, sorry, let me repeat the question. Can you tell me how is going out into the world during COVID different from pre-COVID?
So I guess like the big thing is like, always remembering to bring your mask with you. And
Mm-hmm.
so, at the beginning of when COVID was first starting, like, I was one of those people who didn't wear my mask because I didn't see it as like a big deal. And like, I would see like some people wearing their masks, and I was like, no, like, I don't really see it as like that big of a deal. But then, I got a little bit more serious and all that. And then suddenly, like, everybody was wearing masks. And then, they even started like selling different designs and like making a profit out of it and all that. And so now you even see it today, like they make like commercials and ads for like, oh, buy this mask from this store and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
so just like the mask thing is like a big thing that's kind of had to be part of like the new normal, I guess. And then always like, I feel like even going out, I get a little bit of anxiety too. Like when I get home, like right away, I want to go and wash my hands, and like scrub them really well and all that. Whereas like, we don't have to like worry about all of that before, pre-COVID. And then, like carrying your hand sanitizer with you and making sure that you're staying 6 feet apart, and all these different things that you have to keep in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm. How has your social life changed before? I mean, now, well, I guess let me ask you again. How is your social life different from pre-COVID to now COVID, if that makes sense?
Well, yeah, like I haven't really like seen any of my friends in like a long time, and if I have, it's just like through Zoom meetings and like Zoom meetups. Um, like we haven't really like gone out to like socialize and like get like a social drink or even just to go out to eat. And like I don't know, like even just like going out to a restaurant, like you almost feel guilty going out. And so
Mm-hmm.
like we try to not go out as as little as possible. um, I mean, like whereas like pre-COVID, like I was able to see my friends whenever I wanted to. I was able to drive wherever I wanted to without like, having that anxiety in the back of my head. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, so like we different. Like I thought it was interesting how like a lot of people tried to like still socialize, but just do like social Zooms or like video chats and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what is your take on the Zoom, the online socializing?
I mean, it's different. It's definitely not like the same as like being there one on one with each other. Like especially like if your internet lags and um, you can't really like be there to like give each other a hug or like just to really I don't know just like socialize because you need like that human interaction. Like being there with the person. Like with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I would say that's very true for Latinos. Like Latinos are very social people.
mhm.
So how has COVID interacted who you interact with, and why do you only interact with these people?
I guess it's affected like like obviously like there's still some people who don't take it seriously, and
Mm-hmm.
so they'll still like go out to like the bars or like go to large group gatherings and all that. And so it kind of like makes you think twice about like um like do these people really even care about like this pandemic, or like if I go to hang out with them, that's basically like me saying like I don't care about it either, and like I do care about it because it is something serious. And
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like people don't take it seriously until like it hits home for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So who would you say that you interact with mainly now then?
I mean, I spend most of my time just like with my boyfriend and like his sisters. That's basically all I really like hang out with, and my
Mm-hmm.
dog too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, not like I don't really like go out to see friends or anything. And
Mhm.
like, even like my colleagues, like, I would like, I have a colleague that I'm really close with at school. And so I'd always like go to her room and, just like vent about like my day, and like she would vent about her day. And, it was just like our time to like laugh and talk. But now like it almost feels awkward, going into each other's classrooms, because like you don't want to like, you know, risk that exposure, and like, it's just not the same anymore.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So now I'm gonna move into a little bit talking about your experience as a teacher. So can you tell me how it was going into work before the COVID-19 crisis? Like how it was going into work as a teacher?
Um, so like I'm an ESL teacher, so um, what we did last year, I would go into like the general education classrooms, and I'd be there to like co-teach and help support my ESL students in language arts and math. And so, it was like classes of like 30 plus and all that. And um, but yeah, we were able to like do a lot of like group work and like, interaction and sharing manipulatives and things like that. And so that's what it was like pre-COVID. And then obviously like now like we have to like wear masks and all that, and be constantly reminding them to wash their hands, and constantly reminding them that there's a pandemic going on too. Even though we want to make it seem as normal as possible for them, like we still have to, you know, make them see the reality of it, so that way like they take it seriously too, and like they can like tell their families to take it seriously as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know.
Yeah. So how does your classroom look like now?
So right now, like my biggest class is like maybe like 8 students.
Oh,
But
really? That's
yeah,
small.
I mean that's mainly because like I'm the ESL teacher. So for ESL, like we don't have as many students as like the core teachers. And so
Mm-hmm.
like the core teachers, like they do have like classes of 30 plus in one room. And so, um, but like I do have like a homeroom that like I think my biggest is like 16 students in one homeroom for like 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not too bad.
Yeah. So what type of protocols are put in place when you have to enter, like when you're entering the school? Or are there any protocols put in place?
Mm, I guess like they mainly just like tell us, like wear your mask all the time when you're in the school, even if there aren't any students. Like I still wear mine, even if there aren't isn't anybody around me, like just in case, because you never know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they put one bottle of hand sanitizer in each of our rooms, and they also gave us like microfiber towels and like a spray that to like use as a sanitizer for to wipe down like the furniture and desks and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So like what they told us is we're supposed to wipe down the desk like in between classes, um, and making sure that all the students are sanitizing their hands when they come in the classroom and when they leave the classroom as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and making sure that they're always wearing their masks also.
Mm-hmm. And how how would you explain your students' response to the shift in classroom
I feel
management?
like I feel like at the beginning they were kind of taking it more seriously, because like we at the beginning, like on the first day of school, we had them all go into like their individual homerooms. And so as like the homeroom teacher, we had to give like a short lecture about like what is COVID, how do you get it, what does it do, what happens, and all that. And then we also talked about like what we're doing at Columbus. So like we're enforcing the masks, and that you have to sanitize your hands and all that. So they were pretty understanding of it at the beginning. I have
Mm-hmm.
noticed though, like especially like now, like they're kind of like getting tired of constantly being told like, oh, you have to be 6 feet apart, you have to be wearing your mask, and constantly being reminded to wash your hands and all that. So there are some that will like, not even wear the mask like all the way up, like they'll still have it like underneath their nose, or just like take it off and like fling it around, just like play with it. And
Mm-hmm.
like you have to like be on them, or else like, you know, which I mean like they're middle schoolers too, so
Yeah, yeah, middle schools are always like defiant, right?
Yeah.
Um, so have any of your duties shifted because of the pandemic?
Mm, I mean, I have lunch duty, and so with that, like, we put up like plexiglass on the lunch tables, and we can only allow three on one side. So like if you know like the lunch tables, we can only allow three on one side at a time. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have lunch duty with high schoolers, and so they tend to be a little bit more defiant about that kind of stuff, because you know like they just want to sit down and eat with their friends, um, and just having to remind them of that. And then with that, like they have to sit down first on like a certain piece of tape, and like that's where they have to stay at. And then they can't go get their food until they're dismissed because like we can't have too many, we can't have like a long line of students waiting to get their lunch.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that like we've had to change.
Yeah. So how long does that take then? How long, like, is it usually like is it the same amount of students going to lunch, or are you guys like splitting it now into more sections?
Mm, I mean, it's the same amount of sections as we used to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's the same amount of sections. It's just, I mean, they tend to get their food pretty fast. Like, they're pretty fast about it. I mean, even like the lunch ladies, like they pre-package all the lunch, so they just like leave it there on the table, and they just go and pick it up and go back and sit down.
Mm-hmm.
So they try to make it as like go as smooth and like as easy as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So can you tell me about how does your school respond to a positive COVID-19 case?
So we had our first positive case back in September, and
Mm-hmm.
so at first like they did kind of make like a big deal of it. So they sent out like a text, an email. Yeah, they sent out like an alert to like the whole Columbus Community School District, like the parents and all that, saying that we have somebody that tested positive. um and so like everybody's just like, who is it, who is it,
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, so they did that, and then we did end up having more positives. But the only reason that I heard about it was because another teacher told me about it, because I guess she was a close contact with that certain person that was positive. And so
Mm-hmm.
we basically figured out like the school wasn't going to send out alerts anymore after that first one,
Mm-hmm.
because of HIPAA laws. They want to keep that private information, and so they don't really like say anything if somebody tests positive unless they know that you're a close contact.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Wow, that's a very alarming policy. So if someone tests positive, are like are they required to quarantine like the people exposed around them? Like are teachers required to quarantine? Does the school get shut down? Or what policy is put in? I guess can you tell me a little bit more about the policy?
Um, so like for example, like if a teacher tests positive, so I think they had a quarantine for a certain amount of time, but none of like the students that I know of or like teachers around that person had a quarantine,
Mm-hmm.
because like the governor came out with like a new um, I don't know how to say it, like
Ma-
guideline.
mandate guideline, yeah.
Like saying like if a person tests positive but they were wearing their mask, and like their close contacts around them were wearing a mask, then the close contacts don't need a quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I think it's like if a person tests positive but they're asymptomatic, then I don't think they need a quarantine. They just like they can still show up to work, but as
Mm-hmm.
long as they're wearing their mask and like washing their hands and maintaining their distance and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like technically, like we could have people test be positive at school, and like we don't even know.
Yeah. And how does that make you feel? Like, does it bring any feelings of worry or anxiety?
I mean, when I first found out that they weren't really going to tell us anymore if there was a positive case, like I felt kind of angry, because
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like, well, what if I'm a close contact and they don't, like, how are they supposed to know if I was a close contact or not? And so,
Mm-hmm.
how am I supposed to know if I was in close proximity to somebody who tested positive, or if, especially if it's like a student or somebody? Like, how am I supposed to know? And like, what if I have it and I'm asymptomatic and I'm just over here like spreading it around? to like my friend, like my other like friends and family, or like people that I'm in contact with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know, like a lot of us were kind of angry about that they weren't going to tell us anymore if somebody tested positive.
Yeah, I would be angry as well, but um, I guess another question that I have for that is, do you, well, since like with the policy that the school has in the school has in place, sorry, do you worry about jeopardizing your family's health, your boyfriend's health, since you work in a school setting?
Yeah, I mean, like I think about it a lot too. Like, and then sometimes like I'll wake up and like, if I have like a slight cough or like a slight sore throat, like I think about like, what if I have it? Like, should I get myself tested? Should I even like go to school today? Should I call in?
Mm-hmm.
Like as being a teacher, even then, like you feel guilty about calling in also. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to like create sub plans and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
so like, I've just been like more cautious from now on. Like when I'm at school, like I always wear my mask, even like if I'm not near anybody, and just like constantly washing my hands and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's interesting. I guess another question I have as well is, so you mentioned like in the pre-interview form that there's like a bunch of like varying political ideologies, like among teachers, and I assume again students as well. Do you think that impacts the way people, how serious the pandemic is being taken at the school?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and what ways?
So like Columbus Junction, Iowa, I've no like you know, I've seen obviously like there's a lot of like Trump supporters there,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of teachers that are Trump supporters also, and like even like I won't say like which teacher, but like there's a teacher that will say like um why do we even have to wear our masks? Like she doesn't even believe in it. Like they don't work. Like she's always complaining about like, oh, like I wish we didn't have to wear these masks, like they don't work, like there's no reason for them. And so that's already kind of like a red flag to me, like, like, well, what is she even telling these kids? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if she's even like enforcing it for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah, definitely like our school board too, I feel like there's a lot of people who don't take the pandemic seriously, like they just see it as like an inconvenience. And
Mm-hmm.
so they don't really want to shut down the school at all. Like they just want to like continue as normal as much as they can, even like if it's with the mask and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like the school isn't really taking it as seriously as they should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I would agree with what you're saying. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that's the you have to teach like that. It makes me concerned for your well-being. Um, I guess so continuing more a little bit on your experience as a teacher. So you mentioned that you have to enforce mask mandates and that you have smaller classrooms, or I guess you have smaller classrooms because you're ESL. But has it changed at all in the way you teach? Because I know, like I was talking to a teacher earlier, and she mentioned that when she's like teaching phonetics to young kids, they have to see your mouth, and they can't see the mouth because of the mask.
Hmm.
Like, has any of the policies changed the way you have to teach?
Yeah, I mean, definitely like the mask wearing. So like since I'm ESL, like I have to like they need to see like my mouth movement, like in order to like know how to pronounce a certain word. And so like, sometimes I get a little bit frustrated and like I'll back up as much as I can and just like really quickly like pronounce the word and then put it back on so that way they can understand me because like even like me, like I sometimes can't even understand what they're telling me, like because of the mask. Um, but yeah, it's definitely like changed like um, you know, how would you say it? Like yeah, like the way that I teach ESL, I guess, because like like they need to be able to see like that mouth movement. I did wear like a face shield at first, just so like they could actually like see my face and like see me smile and like know like I'm not like being serious all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but even like after a while, I didn't feel safe enough with just the face shield, so I just started wearing the mask also.
Mm-hmm. What are your opinions on the face shields that have like the clear mouth covering? Does your school have
I
those?
thought, yeah, I thought about those, but I don't know. I just feel like they fog up too much, and like,
Yeah,
I just wouldn't feel comfortable with it. I think.
yeah. Um, well, other than having the mask, like the mask limiting the way people are able to be taught, is there any other ways, or I guess Has it changed in the ways have you managed your class?
I guess like group work also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like if I have them work in partners, like so like we have to have like a seating chart and we have to enforce that seating chart at all times. Like that way, like if one say like one student were to test positive, we could know like who were they in close contact with, like for
Mm-hmm.
my class, for example. And so, like I try to like if I do like partner work or group work, like I try to do it so that it's just like the people around them. And so
Mm-hmm.
like sometimes they'll try to like, be defiant, like because like their friend is like all the way in the corner and like so they want to go work with them. But like I have to tell them like no, like you have to stay and like, with the people that are here with you, like close to you. Like I can't
Mm-hmm.
have you guys like all, you know, mixing together and like spreading out like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely like affected that too.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like the students get a little bit defiant. Like I understand that, getting
Mm-hmm.
tired of the way things are managed and having to change the way they're taught. Okay, let me scroll down a bit. So, can you talk to me a little bit about the challenges your students face with just face-to-face learning in the pandemic?
What challenges they face?
Yeah, like, well, can you just, I guess, how do I reword this? Have your students faced any challenges with having to go to school during the pandemic? Or like, have you noticed any challenges?
I mean, not like big issues that I've seen. Like I said, like the beginning, like they did kind of take it serious, like wearing the mask all the time. I mean, I do have some students where like they wear their masks and like religiously, like they won't ever take it off. Like I know I have a student like he won't even eat lunch because he doesn't want to, put down his mask at all.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like yeah, there are a few students like that. Like I feel like they are kind of like traumatized by like the whole pandemic and like their anxiety is kind of like through the roof with that too.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like some students that it's just like I'm just kind of flinging around my mask like not
Mm-hmm.
care.
Yeah. And do you feel like students are able to learn properly, like in this environment? Like, I guess that's what I was trying to ask. I was trying to get more of like, obviously having to be a student in the pandemic, like there's additional like psychological stressors there. Like, have you noticed an impact at all on how students are learning or retaining information?
I feel like I mean the one good thing about our school, I feel like we have done a pretty good job of making it as normal for them as possible. I mean, like I feel like for most of them, the only difference is that they have to wear a mask,
Mm-hmm.
just washing their hands and like, being reminded to like maintain that distance. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, other than that, I feel like the majority of them, like they have been able to adjust to it pretty easily,
Mm-hmm.
like be in that classroom environment. And like it's just like a lot about like the teacher too, making the connection with them so that, like if I have that connection with my students, like it's going to be more easy for me to teach them and more easier and they'll be more willing to learn also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, I guess this question just came to my mind right now as well. So you mentioned that you guys try to make everything as normal as possible. How have the social events changed? Like, for example, like football games, any concerts, like prom, homecoming. How has that changed? If it has changed at all.
Um, I guess like for sport events, they try to, make the mask mandatory. I mean, like I've been to a few football events or like sports events, and there's a lot of people who won't wear the mask, and they're
Mm-hmm.
not socially distanced or at all. It's basically like you're at a normal football game. Um, um, I guess they haven't had their concert yet, so I don't really know what they're gonna do about that one at all. I mean, like the essential idea is that they're at the public events, like they should all be wearing their masks and like be socially distanced and all that. Um, I know, like I had to work like a volleyball game, and like I was like the ball sanitizer, like that was my job. So, like the volleyball like went into the crowd, like I had to get it and like spray it down and sanitize it, and then we could throw it back into the game. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, And like, yeah, other than that, like, I guess the majority of them don't take it as seriously as like,
Hmm.
they should be.
Yeah. And does that bring up any like feelings of fear, anxiety, or anger in how the school is managing social events?
Oh yeah, because like again, like I feel like the majority of the people at school, like they don't take it seriously, like they don't see it as something serious. Um, like originally, like they had said, if our county reaches like 10% or 15, if our county reaches like 10% of positivity cases, then we would go hybrid, and if we reach 15%, then we would go all virtual. As of
Hmm.
today, like Louisa County's at 15%, and they haven't really said anything about going virtual or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it kind of
So
makes me question like, well, what's going to go happen then?
yeah, yeah, right. Like what's gonna happen now? So with the whole plan of wanting to go virtual or hybrid, like what has the school done, I guess, to help the community during COVID? Like does the school like obviously they're trying to accommodate with like technical accommodations, but are they doing like what efforts have you seen of them trying to
So
implement?
they have already created like a hybrid schedule. We already handed out like to students. So like our hybrid schedule would be like we would have some students come in the morning and some students come in the afternoon. Um, are you still there?
Yeah, sorry, did I freeze?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's okay. You froze as well, so I was just waiting.
Okay.
Okay.
Um, do you need me to repeat what I said?
Well, I think it was recording, but if you want to repeat what you said, I can repeat my question. Did you hear my question?
You were just asking about like what has the school done to prepare
Yeah,
students?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I was just talking about like we created like a hybrid schedule. Well, yeah, they created a hybrid schedule. So our plan would be like we would have a certain amount of students come in the morning and a certain amount of students come in the afternoon. And so, I mean, students would still be at school every single day. It's just like they would either be at school either in the morning or in the afternoon. And like
Mhm,
teachers, we would have to be there every single day, like, both morning and afternoon.
mhm,
And so we've handed that out so students know if they're going to be an AM or PM student. They figured out like if they're an AM student, then they get to take home their lunch with them at the end of the day. And if they're a PM student, they'll be there to eat lunch and then go home. And they'll also like give them breakfast to eat for the next day since they're
mhm,
PM students. Um, yeah, they. I mean, we constantly have like in the announcements like don't forget to wear your mask, like make sure you're washing your hands, make sure you're following the precautions, and we do try to be realistic with them, like or at least I try to. Like students will ask me like Miss Castelan, like how are our positivity rates, and like I'll pull up like the Iowa COVID
mhm,
the demographics and like I'll show them like what are we at right now, and I try to like explain to them like um, how do we go hybrid and how do we go virtual and like what our plans are. Like I try to like tell them as much as I know, but I mean at
mhm,
the same time it's kind of like I don't know if I'm even telling them the right thing.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. That's what it can get confusing. I feel like right now in Iowa, it's a very confusing time because
Yeah.
you hear one thing from someone, one thing from the governor, one thing from someone else. It's like I hate that Iowa's not. There's no consensus. There's no
Yeah.
like same plan on that. But um, so you talked about how the school they're trying to get laptops and they're still providing lunch for students. Are they providing any other resources for like families or students like during this time, or is it mainly just are you guys just there to like just teach, I guess, and still change?
As far as I know, no. I mean it's just like like just providing like that free lunch for them. We do have like like a clothing closet like for families who might be homeless or need like extra food or like extra clothes or like especially like for the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have like that as a resource like if they need like extra jackets and like winter boots and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean,
Yeah. So in the town of Columbus, then, do you feel like the school plays a big role in like managing COVID information, or do you feel like the community relies on another, like, I guess, another service other than the school?
I mean, in my personal opinion, I feel like Columbus is kind of run by like the school district. Like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it is kind of like the school board and like the school district are the ones who kind of like run everything and like get that information out. Because you don't really like hear too much about like other organizations in Columbus, like doing the stuff that like the school district does.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it is kind of like mostly run by like the school district.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting because it's been interesting to hear like how how different schools have approached like just the spread of information.
Mhm.
Um, well, I know we talked about this a little bit, but is there anything else you would like to say on how you feel at work? Like you mentioned that you got angry at first that they changed the mandate, and sometimes you get anxious or nervous of potentially having to spread the virus to like your loved ones. But is there any other concerns that come up for you at work?
I mean, like I just get like frustrated mostly. Like I get frustrated and also like my colleagues get frustrated because I feel like we're kept in the dark a lot. And like they
Mm-hmm.
don't really like tell us anything. Like, like they'll tell us one thing, but then something else happens and like we didn't know about it. And so like I feel like the same thing too. Like I'll tell my students one thing because I try to tell them everything that I know, but
Mm-hmm.
then it's like something else, and then they also get frustrated too because like it's like, well, what is it? Like, what is gonna happen? What's gonna go on? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
wish they were more, how do you say it? Like, um, I don't know how to say it. Like, uh,
Leadership or something?
no, like more clear about
Oh,
like, um, more how do you say it? Transparent?
yeah, transparent. Yeah, there
Yeah,
you go.
yeah, that's the word I was looking for. More transparent with like, how we're gonna handle this. Because I feel like they'll like throw out like warnings here and there, like we might be going hybrid or like we might go virtual, so just like keep that in mind. But like I feel like we're not prepared at all for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, so you mentioned you like you're mentioning that you feel frustrated, you feel anxious, like you feel worried. Would you feel comfortable enough to bring up any like safety concerns with like the school's administration?
Safety concerns.
Yeah, like do you like you yourself like would you feel comfortable enough to bring up any concerns with the school's administration? Like do you feel like you could talk to the administrators and that they would take your concerns into well like yeah, acknowledge your concerns?
Mm, I don't know, like we have like there's like a team at our school, so like they're the building leadership team, and so
Mhm.
they're the ones who try to like figure out like how are teachers feeling, like what kind of professional development do we need and all that. So they do send out like surveys. Like they recently did send out a survey to all staff members just to see like how we're feeling, like what are our frustrations, do we feel safe at school, if not why. um, and so like and then they did like send us like the results, like what did people answer. So I was able to see like, other staff members, like they kind of feel the same, like they feel frustrated, they feel anxiety all the time, like they feel like some teachers or some staff members aren't really like enforcing like all the rules that we have and the guidelines. And so I feel like that's kind of like a way that we are kind of sending our voice to the administration of how we're
Mhm.
feeling.
Mhm.
I don't know if I personally would go up to them like by myself to do that.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting take. I just wanted to know a little bit more about that. But I guess going back a little bit to you, so you mentioned that there was a team and they do surveys and they're trying to like, like really have a grasp on what's going on, but what would you personally like to see different in terms of how the school is handling the pandemic?
I mean, personally, I feel like we shouldn't be 100% face to face right now. Like,
Mhm.
especially with the numbers rising and all that. Like, I don't know, I feel like we should have been more prepared for it. Like, especially since the schools got closed down since March, and like we had all summer and all that. And so I kind of wish they would have, pushed out more about like because we have to use Canvas like as a way to, um, post assignments and all that in case we do go virtual. Like I wish they would have pushed that out sooner and not have it like, be all last minute because even like right now we don't even have like the student accounts yet for Canvas. Some students don't even have their computers yet. We haven't really gotten training on how to use the computers, like what are the best practices for them.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, like honestly, like I feel like we should be hybrid right now, and like hopefully we do go hybrid soon. I know
Mm-hmm.
it's probably not the best way for students to learn, but I feel like we need to be more concerned about like their safety right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting take on how the school's handling everything. Um, in your opinion, why do you think that is? Why do you think you guys have stayed in person and not gone to hybrid?
So I mentioned before, like so when Teachers Week came back, it was our first day back, so like they had like a whole lecture about like what percentage do we have to be at in order to go hybrid? What percentage do we have to be at to go virtual? So like they told us we had to be at 10% positivity rate in Louisa County in order to go hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right now we're at 15%. And so then they told us like, oh, well, the school district has to have at least a 10% absenteeism.
Mm-hmm.
So meaning like we have to have at least 10% of staff and students absent due to testing positive for COVID. And so right now I think we have like uh, less than like 5% testing positive.
Mm-hmm.
So like supposedly that's the reason why we haven't gone hybrid or completely online, even though
Mm-hmm.
like Louisa County is having like high numbers right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's their reasoning behind it.
Yeah. Wow. That's it sounds like there's a lot of uncertainty there.
Hmm.
There's a lot of uncertainty there. Okay. So I guess I'm approaching the end of the questions. Um, so some so you know how when the pandemic started, some people started to get furloughed or let go of their jobs, or yeah, they weren't able to go in. Have you had any concerns about being furloughed or any finance concerns?
I mean, I'm not too worried about being like furloughed or like like being let go. So I feel like even now, like we have so little staff at Columbus, and so like they can't afford to like let one of us go. And so I haven't been like too concerned about it. I mean, like I have thought about like this might be like my last year there at the school district just because like like of how the way that they've handled everything. And I just don't feel like they support teachers and students as much as other school districts that I've seen. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know. I just feel like it's not really like my place there anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's understandable. So yeah, so I guess now approaching a little bit towards the end, can you tell me a little bit on how Iowa has handled the pandemic? So we talked about like Columbus Junction, we talked about Iowa City, but can you tell me on how Iowa's handled the pandemic?
You mean like schools in Iowa?
Yeah, well, I guess we can start there. We can talk about schools and then we can talk about like the broader government.
Well, I know like a lot of teachers in Iowa are angry, because like, the governor hasn't like she doesn't really like care about students at this point or about teachers at this point.
Hmm.
Like or like I know like I've seen like Iowa City School District, like they really were trying to push back against like her mandates and like they want it to be completely online. I know Des Moines is trying to push back against them too.
Hmm.
But I don't know, like I feel like especially like Iowa, like there's still like a lot of people who don't really believe in the pandemic or don't take it seriously that much. Like I
Hmm.
still will go into like small towns surrounding Iowa City or like Columbus, and like everybody's like without a mask on, just going about their day like normal. And so
Hmm.
I don't know. I feel like yeah, like they're not. There's a lot of people who don't really see it as a big deal.
Hmm. And how do you feel like our governor has handled the pandemic?
Yeah, like I said, like she hasn't really shown that she, cares for the well-being of students and staff in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
um,
And other than like having just like mask and social distancing enforced, is there anything else you would like to see different in how Iowa is handling the pandemic?
I don't know, I guess like just like providing more resources too, especially for low-income families. Um, like I don't really know what to do about it. Because one of like the problems of like being completely online is like there might not be like childcare for some parents. Like they might have to like miss work or like they don't know what to do either. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
it's easier if they're working from home, but if they're not working from home, like in Columbus, especially, like a lot of our parents work at the Tyson food plant, and so
Mm-hmm.
they're at work all day, like, from early in the morning all the way until late at night. And so if students were to be completely online, like they'd be by themselves all day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so there's not really that accountability either, to like do their classwork or like, you know, keeping themselves accountable and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I guess like just like providing more resources or even just like, um, I don't know, finding like a way so that families can stay home, like they can work from home or like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Just
No, those are really good points. I've never really, I mean, I guess I have thought about that, but I guess from your teacher's perspective, those are really good points. Okay. So how now we're gonna move a little bit to the federal government. How has the federal government handled the pandemic?
uh, I don't know. Like I feel like it's especially right now with like the Trump administration, like they try to handle it the best that they can, but at the same time, like I said, like I feel like there needs to be more resources out there, and I feel like there's more that they could do,
Hmm.
maybe.
Yeah, and what would you like to see different, I guess, and how our federal government is handling the situation? Sorry, I dropped something.
Um, I guess, um, well, like I said, like especially for like low income families, like providing maybe some sort of how do you say it, like how do you say it?
Like safety net programs?
Yeah, yeah. There you go. So it's just like providing a safety net program. So like, especially if they get laid off or like they lose their job or they're not able to go into work because like they have to stay home like with their kids or things like that, or um, if one of the family members gets sick, like having like that health care too, like access to free health care and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, just like having like that safety for them.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Okay, so that's the end. That's the last question I had to ask. So I guess just reflecting on your experiences as a teacher, is there anything like last minute thoughts you'd like to express or share with me?
I guess like right now it's just like an interesting time to be like an essential worker, um, because it's kind of like um, at the beginning like we weren't really considered essential workers, but now we are, and it's kind of um, like it's just been like a different experience. Like it's definitely like a world that I never really thought I'd be in. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, like I said, like it's just frustrating and like the uncertainty of everything, and like the anxiety and all that.
Hmm.
I try to like go about my day as normal. I try to like teach as normal, but then at the same time, it's like it's always in the back of my head, like what if this happens? What if that? Like, what about my
Hmm.
students? Are they going to be okay?
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know how, like, kudos to you. Like everything you told me, like you're an awesome person, Ismenia. Like that's awesome that you're teaching during the pandemic. Like I just don't know how they expect teachers to do like their job and then to cope with the pandemic. That's hard. Like everything is like expressed. That's a really hard thing to do. Yeah, but I appreciate you sharing your experiences with me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Um, so before I let you go, I'm just gonna let it keep recording. Are there any other teachers that you can connect me with?
Um, and like Latino base.
Yeah, like Latino teachers, like whether it be in Columbus or any other teachers you know.
Yeah, I mean, I could connect you with like the Spanish teacher.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just me and her that are really like the only Latino teachers there.
Oh, really? And the rest are like white teachers at the
Mhm. Yeah.
interesting. Okay, yeah, that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna stop recording. So, yeah, whoever's editing this, I'm sorry.